I've already covered some of the biggest box office bombs of the year, but aside from the likes of Joker 2 and Coppola's Megalopolis, there's a bunch of flops nobody even noticed. With bloated budgets, non-existent marketing, or downright dumb plots, these movies got me thinking, what the hell were they even doing? Looking at you, Sony. Let's start with the biggest loser of the year, Lionsgate, and its bunch of frankly ridiculous flops. They pulled off the most idiotic record of the year with 7 consecutive box office bombs in a row. One of them is 1992, starring Tyrese Gibson and featuring the late Ray Liotta in one of his final roles. Lionsgate, in what feels like a theme for them this year, completely botched the release, giving it a limited run in just 875 theaters. Not even 1,000. The best part? 1992 is actually solid. It's a gritty heist thriller set during the first night of the 1992 Los Angeles riots, and Tyrese Gibson delivers what might be the best performance of his career, and Ray Liotta is incredible as the villain as always. Sure, it's not perfect. Some hiccups in execution keep it from being great, but it's definitely worth a watch. Lionsgate just didn't give it the chance it deserved. Sony might be giving Lionsgate a run for its money in the bad movies of the year category. They kicked off 2024 with Madame Web and wrapped it up with Kraven the Hunter, and it's not pretty. Right now, Craven is bombing hard, with the worst opening weekend ever for a Sony Spider-Man universe movie, even beating Madame Web to the bottom. Critics trashed it, and honestly, nobody cared about Craven to begin with. Sony's Spider-Man spin-offs without Spider-Man clearly aren't working. Calling Craven a movie no one asked for isn't even criticism. It's just stating the obvious. The CGI goes to cheap and desperate so fast it's almost Scorpion King bad by the end. Rumor has it, after this disaster, Sony might sell Spider-Man back to Marvel. Robert Zemeckis teamed up with Tom Hanks again for a drama that brought Hanks back together with his Forrest Gump co-star, Robin Wright. The movie uses some wild AI tech to de-age the actors and face swap them in real time while they acted. But the problem is, Zemeckis kinda went all in on the tech and forgot about the story, leaving the characters underdeveloped. The Observer called it a soulless, meandering bore, and many critics felt the heavy use of de-aging made it hard to connect with the characters. Apparently, studios saw this coming. Most passed on it early, calling it too risky and niche. It was mostly funded through foreign sales, and even Miramax's co-owner Paramount didn't want to handle it globally. Zemeckis himself said the theatrical movie business is in a stressful situation right now, or maybe we're just not dropping $30 to watch some AI nonsense. Fly Me to the Moon had a $100 million budget and only made $42 million at the box office. Nobody knew this movie even existed. Imagine all the stuff that money could have gone to instead of being thrown into a wood chipper. It didn't help that the movie looked generic. People aren't shelling out $30 for something they can watch at home in a month on Apple TV+. Plus, some trailers hinted at a faking the moon landing subplot, which rubbed certain audiences the wrong way. The whole thing just didn't feel like a must-see in theaters. Even Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum's combined star power couldn't save it. And let's be real, Tatum's star power isn't what it used to be. The Coen brothers gave us Fargo and No Country for Old Men, but lately Joel and Ethan have been doing their own thing. This year, Ethan's first solo film, Drive Away Dolls, came out, and it totally tanked. The movie was supposed to drop last fall, but it got pushed to February because of the Screen Actors Guild strike. That didn't help much. It only made $2.4 million on opening weekend and barely hit $7.9 million worldwide on a $20 million budget. A pitiful sum for the guy who helped deliver classics like The Big Lebowski. People weren't exactly loving it either. Some said it felt hollow, way more sexual than the trailer hinted, and just plain bad. There were even reports of people walking out of the theater. Sometimes the biggest flops aren't the movies everyone's heard of. They're the ones nobody even knows exist. That's exactly what happened with Sony's biblical comedy. With a $40 million budget, The Book of Clarence hit theaters in early January, and it was a disaster right out of the gate. The film's unique take on Christianity didn't connect with faith-based audiences or anyone else, for that matter. Faith-based movies can crush it when they're aimed at traditional church-going crowds. Just look at Sound of Freedom. But this one was tough to market, and with no merch potential or international appeal, Sony was stuck with a huge loss. Harold and the Purple Crayon is such a mess, it feels like it sat forgotten on someone's desk for decades before finally being dumped into theaters. The film starring Zachary Levi tried to put a grown-up spin on Harold's story, but audiences weren't buying it. The movie's actually been finished since 2022, but Sony only just released it this summer. This project's been kicking around for nearly 15 years, dating all the way back to when Josh Klausner, Shrek III, wrote an early script. Clearly, nobody could crack the story, and the version Sony went with just didn't click. Critics tore it apart too, calling it bleak as hell. It's sitting at a dismal 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. It seems like Sony didn't even bother putting much effort into marketing, probably because they knew it wasn't going to do well anyway. Originally scheduled to come out in September 2022, White Bird is a war drama directed by Mark Forster that serves as both a prequel and a sequel to Wonder, released in 2017. Lionsgate only gave it a limited release in about 1,000 theaters, and with constant delays, it was pretty much set up to fail. Despite all that, the movie did manage to get an A+ cinema score and a 99% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is kind of wild considering most people hadn't heard of it. Set against the backdrop of the Holocaust, it's an emotional story with a strong message about kindness and humanity. It's a shame White Bird flopped, making just $6.8 million worldwide on a $20 million budget. With better marketing, or honestly just a proper release, it might have found an audience. Saturday Night was clearly made for fans of SNL. It's a love letter to the show, dripping with nostalgia. But here's the thing, that nostalgia doesn't exactly pull in younger viewers. Honestly, it probably would have done way better as a Peacock original. The truth is, this kind of movie just doesn't have a big theater audience. No superheroes, no serial killers, no huge stars. It's a niche movie for SNL fans, and most of them would rather watch it at home. It's fun, sure, but it feels more like a streaming release than something you'd pay for in a theater. Not even sure what they spent $25 million on, it didn't look like the kind of movie that needed to cost that much. Maybe Jason Reitman or Lorne Michaels got a fat paycheck. Some movies just feel like they should have gone straight to streaming, and The Killer's Game is definitely one of them. It's a solid C-level, maybe B-level action movie at best, if that makes sense. These kinds of films have always had a limited audience in theaters, and it's even worse these days. Lionsgate barely marketed it too. The action's decent, even well shot at times, but nothing groundbreaking. It screams Netflix movie. Dave Bautista is a great actor, but he's not the strongest leading man for generic action roles. I'm surprised Bautista even signed up for it, considering he's been vocal about wanting more serious roles. M. Night Shyamalan's daughter got her shot at directing with The Watchers. The budget was $16 million, financed by Papa Shyamalan himself. But Warner Brothers shelled out $30 million to acquire it, probably hoping to stay on M. Night's good side. With that kind of backing, you'd think the movie would make a splash. Instead, it fizzled out fast, barely making $33 million. Critics trashed it, calling it a weak imitation of her dad's work. The pacing is weird, the ending feels rushed, and the whole thing is full of plot holes. Most of it takes place outside, and it throws in fairies, shape-shifting, genocide, and a bunch of random stuff that just doesn't add up. It's not the worst movie ever, but it's hard to take seriously. Honestly, this probably would have worked better as a smaller indie film. Pretty much everything Lionsgate has touched lately has flopped, and Never Let Go was no exception. It's a shame for Halle Berry, who put way more effort into promoting this than the studio did. The concept had potential. Halle Berry plays a mother trying to protect her twin sons from an evil force outside their house, literally tethering them together with ropes to stay connected. But the hype was non-existent, and that awful trailer didn't help. It looked like a mix of A Quiet Place and Bird Box, but with ropes. Lionsgate's marketing problem is a whole thing. They either barely spend money or completely miss their target audience. This one didn't get much of a push until 2 weeks before it came out, and it felt more like a streaming movie than something for theaters.